Welcome to another episode of Daily Airline News focusing on the search for MH370. Today, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by my co-host Blaine Gibson to discuss all things debris. Uh, Welcome, Blaine.
Well, good afternoon to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. So we're following up, viewers, with the new pieces of debris that Blaine has given us details of. And the first question comes from Martip 1 Whiskey 1 Uniform. Thank you, Blaine and Jeffrey, for your ongoing focus on keeping this discussion respectful and accurate. With respect to the lack of any but the most resilient debris making their way across the Indian Ocean, it might be worth reminding viewers of the vast distances and times required for these pieces to reach there. A question for Blaine and your army of debris experts: is it possible that many initially floating debris would have lost enough buoyancy to remain below the surface but still end up crossing the ocean and end up trapped on a reef or settling in the shallows? Have any credible debris ever been found by recreational divers? Interesting
Well,
question.
Martip, you make a very good point about the distances that the debris has to travel. Neutral buoyancy is very rare. That is where an object would actually be slightly underwater and drift without sinking or floating. That's very rare. It can occur. It may be that the flaperon floated partially submerged. We don't know. But most debris that floats just floats in the sense of the word that we know it, which is on the surface. And one piece of debris, it was a section of the tail, was retrieved out of the shallow water in Mozambique. Another one I found no step. It was a part of the tail that was on a sandbank that shifts with the tides. You have to go there in between the high tide and the low tide to be able to search, find something, and get out. Otherwise, the debris has been found washed ashore. Now, in Mauritius and Rodriguez, two pieces of debris had to go through a reef pass in order to wash ashore, because it's unlikely that it would get stuck on a reef. No debris has been recovered stuck on a reef. It would probably just bounce off and move on. So you make some very good points about the debris. No debris have yet been found by divers.
David Calland asks, I was surprised to hear that the powers chose November to April as their preferred time for searching for MH370, because that period fits the exact span of the Indian Ocean cyclone season, where there can be multiple tropical cyclones stirring the pot and probably scattering any MH370 debris near and far over the Indian Ocean. While it is true that tropical cyclones in the Indian Ocean may and do occur at other times beyond the recognised season, the probability is significantly reduced. MH370 crashed in early March, well within the cyclone season, although I am unaware of any tropical cyclones in the likely crash area. But perhaps it could be useful to run a truncated survey of weather conditions post-crash in the unlikely case of not already having been done.
Well, a cyclone on the surface would not affect debris on the seafloor at all. So the reason that they have chosen to do the underwater search from November to April as the best time is that the seas are calmer, unless a cyclone happens to go through, which they could avoid. The seas are calmer then, and the ship can be more stable for deployment of its AUVs. So that is the best season for doing the underwater search. Now, regarding the season for floating debris, I have found that on the shorelines of Madagascar, Mauritius, Mozambique, the best time is around March, April, May, June, just after the cyclones have stirred things up, maybe unearthed some things and washed them back in. So that would be the time to look for the floating debris.
And also, David, to your last part of your question about the actual when the actual aircraft crashed, we have actually mentioned several times that there were 2 to 3 cold fronts that went through that area in March of 2014, and where we believe the aircraft did crash is in the University of Western Australia debris search area, and we didn't start searching in that area until the 28th of March, 20 days later. So you've got a search that starts 20 days after the aircraft has crashed, and you've had 2 cold fronts go through, and possibly a third. So that's one of the reasons why there wasn't a debris trail as such ever seen, because everything would have been dispersed everywhere. So that just follows that up for you. Now, Simon King 7820, guys, did the debris seem to wash up or be found in groups? I mean, were the first 5 pieces found from the front of the plane, then the next pieces from another part, or did they wash up in random order? Great show as always.
Very good question, Simon. The answer is totally random. The first piece found was the flaperon from the wing. The second piece found was the wing fairing. Then the engine cowling, Roy, in South Africa. And then I found a piece from the tail, the horizontal stabilizer in Mozambique. And then a French couple found a piece of the interior cabin closet door on the island of Rodriguez. So it's totally random the way they've been found.
So Buffalo Rick 5598. So it would seem a controlled ditching was attempted, but you seem to all agree it failed miserably due to high waves, which makes sense. But might you be underestimating the possibility of the fuselage being more intact than, let's say, 10 pieces, as Blaine suggests? Maybe the seat cushions are still in place.
Well, I don't believe that a controlled ditching was attempted, and neither do ATSB and Annex 13 and the professional engineers who have examined the wing flap and flaperon and other debris. However, that's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I don't really care if there was an attempted ditching or not. I know that you and Larry Vance and a lot of Larry Vance's disciples really want to believe that there was a controlled ditching and that the plane is intact or mostly intact underwater. I'm sorry, the debris just shows that it isn't. It's shattered into many pieces. Now, could there be less than 10 big chunks of the plane? Yes, there could be. We don't know what the condition of the plane and debris is. It depends on how exactly the plane hit the water, whether it was an attempted ditching or not. What is the angle that it hit it? Was there flutter? I saw an interesting exchange between Bill Tracy and Stick to Facts on the latest video, where Stick to Facts points out that some experts believe that the wing flap, the flaperon could have detached in the air on the way going down due to flutter. We don't know. We need to find the wreckage to know. So all I can say with you, Buffalo Rick, is let's just agree to disagree on the ditching attempt. We can settle it over a pitcher of beer at the left bank in Fremantle or the Flying Dodo in Port Louis when we're celebrating after Malaysia 370 is found. Then we'll know the answer. We do know that the plane and the fuselage are not intact underwater. But meanwhile, we can both agree that the search needs to be wider from the seventh arc based on oceanography alone, regardless of whether there was a glide or an attempted ditching or a half-ass ditching or a high-speed crash. The search needs to be done wider from the seventh arc. So let's just agree to disagree on the rest and settle it later.
Jughead Jones, 5458. Is there a likelihood that debris has washed up onto land and is buried in sand by now? In the areas where the debris has been found, have metal detectors been used to hunt for more debris?
The answer is yes. Good point. It's quite likely that debris has been washed ashore and been buried by sand. Most of the debris is composite, so a metal detector wouldn't help. And my friends and the local people in Madagascar don't have metal detectors. I didn't look with a metal detector, and I don't think it would do too much good. And remember, there has never been an official search of beaches and shorelines in Africa, in Madagascar, Mozambique, South Africa. There should have been. But yes, it is quite possible that there is debris under the sand, and it can then get washed out by storms and rains, and then washed back in, pushed by a cyclone. So it is worth looking at. I wish I had a metal detector, but doubt it would do that much good.
Okay. Peter Walker, 7869. G'day, Jeffrey. Re the seat cushions and life jacket questions. I've been in a fair number of airliners, and every seat I've sat in was well constructed. Yes, they are. The seat and the backrest are all attached to seat structure and not loose. Can you explain that the life jacket from a boat stroke ship are not the same as used on an aircraft? I'm fairly sure an aircraft life jacket will actually sink before it is inflated. That's why during the before takeoff safety briefing, you are told that if we land on water, do not inflate your life jacket before exiting the aircraft. And also from RS Gardner, regarding the life jacket debris, anyone who has travelled on an airplane has heard the opening remarks from the flight attendants instructing passengers on how to inflate the life jackets in an emergency. Life jackets that have not been inflated and are safely tucked away will not likely float, and no life jacket debris will be found. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and I look forward to seeing shows this coming fall when the search resumes.
Well, Peter Walker and R.S. Gardner, thank you very much for your well-informed comments about seat cushions and life jackets. I have not found any seat cushions and life jackets. I think that the reason that you have stated is very good, that if the life jackets were not inflated, they will sink. And regarding the seat cushions, they say, in the announcement, use the seat cushion for flotation. Well, that's if you survive the crash. You can use the seat cushion for flotation, but not very long. The seat cushion, even if it is released and floating, is not going to last very long in the ocean. And so it'll get waterlogged, sink, deteriorate. So thank you. I think that those are the reasons that I have not found any life jackets and seat cushions. And of course, none were spotted in the aerial search, either because they weren't released or because the aerial search wasn't until 3 weeks after the plane crashed.
So from Nick Osborne, EC7 Zulu November. I have no background in aviation, but have found your podcasts and now listen daily in the United Kingdom. to what I consider the most interesting and reliable podcasts on YouTube. Well, thank you very much. It really is an exceptional podcast full of interesting detail, which is delivered factually and with respect. It is sadly one of the few journalistic programs that are available today which has no other objective other than to inform. Please keep going. You are really very good and valued. Well, thank you, Nick, very much. Nice comment, Blaine.
Yes, thank you very much, Nick. Your encouragement means a lot to me. Thanks.
Now, from AFKO, as long as you do not consider the witnesses and testimonies from the Maldives, you will never find this plane. They are the most important key witnesses in this case because of the angle and the timing they saw it. In fact, do you even know where the Maldives are, who even found a strange object that looks like an aircraft in their waters? Why are they being overlooked? Someone is hiding something for sure. And also from Richard Malaski, 1949, thank you both for clarifying the Maldives sighting of a passenger plane while flying low over the water, and especially for your treatment of the debris with respect. It really shows you are caring in nature. Now, I've got some comments on this. Blaine, you want to make a comment on the Maldives sighting?
Yes, I do, because I have been to the Maldives at least 3 times and spoken to the witnesses. I consider them and respect them very much, the witnesses in Kudahuvudu. They did not see a plane crash. There has not been any debris there. The plane was almost out of fuel then. If it were Malaysia 370, it would have been almost out of fuel. They definitely saw a large, low flying jet plane, and I have always believed them. What happened is that there was a Saudi private jet that we did not know about because it was private. So it wasn't regularly scheduled at all. There was no public record of it. A Boeing 777 268 looks identical to 777-200. Similar color scheme. The difference could be accounted for by sunlight, blue with some gold that could appear to be red. And it landed, because we finally obtained the record, in Male about an hour and a half after the sighting. So it is much more likely that is what the Kudahuvudu witnesses saw. I fully believe them. As far as seeing something that looked like a plane floating in water, those were not Maldivians that saw that. No Maldivian witnesses saw a crash. There was an Australian blogger who looked at some Google Earth photos of some white caps and waves very near Timarafushi that he claimed on the internet was the plane that he had found 370. Well, the problem is they were white caps and waves, and the photo was from 2012. So unless Malaysia 370 did fly through a time warp back in time and then sit on the water, that wasn't the plane. And I have been there. I have gone to the spot. There is nothing there. It's very close to the shore. So somehow, after going through that wormhole, if that were Malaysia 370, it would have had to be teleported back into outer space or somewhere. So no, that was not a Maldivian witness. That was an Australian blogger, and that was not the plane. And then Jeffrey and Richard have done some more research on this to identify and confirm exactly what that plane was, the Saudi plane.
Yeah, it was some Saudi princes looking at real estate, and that's why they were flying low over those islands. And so, I mean, they definitely saw a Boeing 777, as you said, Blaine, but it was a Saudi one. And in fact, we've actually got the air traffic control records showing that it landed in Mali an hour or so later. And Richard's actually produced a paper on it. There's been quite an extensive amount of work done on that to totally refute it. It was not Malaysian 370. So Maldives is out.
Right.
Now,
That's right.
Andy Beckett, 4480. I'm astounded that there are still folk who are prepared to give credence to the unhinged conspiracy theories in the face of overwhelming factual and scientifically established evidence about the fate of MH370. So, Blaine, what about these various conspiracy theories? You've got some thoughts on that?
I have learned that in life, and especially in 370 land, that when many people have made their minds up, there is absolutely nothing, no amount of evidence, nothing you can do to ever convince them otherwise. Uh, when people claim that 370 is intact underwater and the fuselage intact underwater, it's not. The evidence proves that it is not. However, I think even when the plane is found, some of the people will still insist on it. The people who claim that 370 was shot down in the South China Sea or flown to Kazakhstan and buried in the sand or landed in Diego Garcia are going to continue to believe that no matter what evidence is presented, even finding and recovering the plane in black boxes, they're still going to continue to believe it. There are still people who believe that the earth is flat and the sun revolves around it. There are still people who believe that the lunar landing was fake. And I just recognize that there's nothing that I can do to ever convince those people. So I don't try. I just try to find the evidence. I approached my 370 investigation with a very open mind. I even searched early on in the Gulf of Thailand and the Andaman Sea before going to the coast of Australia, Mauritius, Rodrigues, Mozambique, and Madagascar. So I started with a very open mind, but I follow the evidence that I find, the evidence that other people find, and come to conclusions based on that, and have always been open to changing my mind about what happened based upon the real evidence that appears.
Rob Barton, 7972, smashed to bits, question mark. The damage could be as bad as silk hair. We will not know till we find the wreckage. Well, that's perfectly true too, as you've suggested, Blaine. We won't know until we find the wreckage exactly what state it's in.
I didn't get that ahead of time anyhow, but I could wing it.
No. It just repeats what we've already said. So
Okay.
so Alston Brown, 520. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it would be very possible to find baggage, luggage, suitcases, boxes. However, in a modern commercial aircraft like the Boeing 777 of MH370 and Airbuses, suitcases are stored and secured in large airline containers, which would be very heavy and would sink to the bottom of the Indian Ocean. Therefore, it would be rare to find those items. Now, that's a very good point that Alston Brown makes, because all the baggage on the Malaysian aircraft would have been containerized.
Yes, Alston, that is an excellent point, and I have not found any possible checked bags from Malaysia 370. I did mention that I found some possible personal effects, none of which could have been tied definitely to the plane. However, they were possible, but interestingly enough, those were all smaller handbags.
Hmm.
So I think you've made a very good point as to why nobody saw any suitcases floating or have found any suitcases. And as far as the smaller bags go, I don't know. They were never officially investigated, and there wasn't anything that I could definitely tie to the plane. Possible matches, but nothing concrete, and just small bags.
One note of clarification, Alston. There are still some aircraft out there today. In fact, all 737s, for instance, do not have containerized baggage. Neither do Boeing 757s. So, it's a bit of a mix, but certainly when it comes to wide body, twin aisle aircraft like the 777 and 787 and A330, A350, A380, all the baggage is containerized. So, just a point of clarification. And talking of the moon, I saw some images the other day taken, I think, by a Japanese or an Indian spacecraft that was circling the moon. Um, and it was a picture of one of the Apollo landing craft and it was casting a shadow. So it's definitely there. Yes, yeah, these conspiracies. Of course, the trouble is, this is an unprecedented event. We haven't had anything like this in modern times, and therefore, the lack of information and various dynamics have led to conspiracy theories, which is very unfortunate. But anyway, Blaine, thank you very much for your time today to answer these questions. We're going to have you back in a couple of days to talk about some more debris that you're going to give us the details of, which is going to be fantastic. So, viewers, thank you very much indeed for watching. Please subscribe to us. Please like us. Please keep your comments coming. We do sincerely appreciate them. And do tune in tomorrow for another edition of Daily Airline News focusing on the search for MH370. Thank you, Blaine.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and thanks to all viewers.